Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com. In this video, we're going to continue our look at the Topaz line of plugins. Today we're going to do Clarity. But before we do, I hope you could bear with me. I want to talk about one thing, and I know I'm overreacting to this, but the first video I did on this Topaz line of plugins was denoise. And shortly after I did that video, I received a tweet from someone who said that they were sorry that I was now a shill for Topaz Labs. Well, let me state, because I didn't say so in that video, that Topaz Labs is not paying me to do these videos. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not getting any money from them. As a matter of fact, I've never made a nickel from any manufacturer, any software company ever. I do all those Lightroom videos, all those Photoshop videos, all those different videos. No one's ever given me a nickel. How I make my living is I'm a photographer and I teach photography and I make these videos on YouTube and I get some ad revenue, not very much. Apparently, if you do prank videos, you make a lot more money than if you do photography videos. So keep that in mind if you ever want to make YouTube videos. That's that. And I make money selling my Photoshop actions and my Lightroom presets. And some people are actually kind enough to give me donations. And to all those folks, thank you very much. Those that buy my stuff and that make donations to me. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. Now, with that said, I would like to do everything for free and take all the ads off YouTube. I wish I could. So if someone out there, some company out there wants to sponsor me, I don't see what's wrong with it. If they wanted to, sign me to a contract, give me a big fat check, and then I'll do everything for free and I'll travel to your city and I'll do free seminars. I think that would be great as long as they let me speak my mind and not lie about anything. That would be the way it would have to work. So if you're a big company or a rich benefactor, and you want to send me a big check, feel free. Until then, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if I ever become a shill, um, I will be an honest shill, and I will tell you ahead of time that so and so has sponsored me to do a video. So if I ever not say it, that means I'm not being sponsored. Okay. So as I mentioned, I know I'm overreacting to that one single tweet, but I thought I should get that out of the way. Now, I did mention we're going to do Topaz Clarity. One thing I didn't make clear in that first video I did on Topaz denoise is when you should do denoise in your workflow. And what I would suggest is if you're shooting JPEG, that you should use denoise first. Use it right off the bat. Get rid of the noise in the image, then process your image in whatever program you're using, be it Lightroom, Photoshop, Irfanview, whatever. It doesn't matter. Get rid of the noise first and denoise. On the other hand, if you're shooting raw, I would suggest you do every adjustment you could do except for noise reduction and sharpening, because you're going to use, first of all, denoise for the noise reduction, and you don't want to sharpen because you'll be sharpening noise, if that made any sense. So again, if you're shooting raw, let's say you're in Lightroom, do all the adjustments you can in Lightroom, except don't do anything in the detail panel. Don't sharpen the image and don't do any of that noise reduction. The reason being is because when you send the image over to denoise, the raw file is abandoned. You're creating a TIFF file. So the TIFF file goes over to denoise. You remove the noise from the TIFF file. Then the TIFF file gets loaded into Lightroom and you do your processing on that. So if you do this first, if you do it first in your workflow, you're going to lose all that power of the raw file that you had. So do as many adjustments as you can. You might not want to add a vignette to it or anything like that. So you just do your basic adjustments, tone curve, HSL, split toning, camera calibration, then send it over to denoise. Then when it comes back, you could sharpen it, you could add a vignette, things like that, okay? So with that said, you can see down here in the film strip, I have 4 images, but they're actually just 2 different images. One is a raw file, and the other one is the TIFF file because I already sent it to denoise. And likewise with this one of the horse, there's the raw file, and there's the TIFF file. I sent that one to denoise as well. So I processed them in Lightroom. I didn't do anything in the detail panel. I sent it over to denoise. The TIFF file was created. I reduced the noise into noise. Now we're sitting here and we're going to send it to Clarity. So to do that, I'm on the TIFF file. I'm going to right click on the thumbnail. I'm going to go up to Edit in Topaz Fusion Express. Now, because it's a TIFF file, I could send the original over, send a copy, or send a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Now, I didn't do any adjustments on this TIFF file in Lightroom, but either way, I always send the original. You could send a copy. That way, if you screw up in Clarity, you could just, delete that one and you have the original one to go. I'm not going to screw up, first of all. Second of all is I don't want all those TIFF files sitting down here. If I get done with Clarity and I want to send it to another plugin, then another plugin, then another plugin, and I make a copy every single time, I get all those extra files. And after a while, I don't know which is which. So I want to edit the original. That's up to you again. Do it as you see fit. And like I mentioned, we're using Clarity today, and we're going to click Run. Now, when Clarity opens at the bottom here, you could see that it's creating a bunch of previews, and I'll talk to you about why it's doing that in a second. Right now, what we're going to do is just take a kind of a tour around the workspace. On the left, which is kind of typical for Topaz plugins, on the left you'll see are the presets. And the presets are kept in collections. And that is what you saw forming down here. We are getting previews done because I'm on the landscape collection. If I go on to the general collection, you could see these previews are getting created. And when the previews are done, what you could do is you could just hover over a preset and you'll get a preview of the preset. And you could see as we go through like that. So that's just an overview of this left panel. Of course, the middle is where the image itself is. So we could, see the image and we could adjust the size for viewing and stuff like that. Then on the right-hand side, we have another view of the image, kind of a loop view, and then we have the actual controls. Now, on this specific image, I'm just going to use a preset because, quite frankly, that's usually what I do. I use a preset, and then sometimes I go over to the controls and I touch things up and I use masking to mask away the areas that I don't want clarity to be applied. And that's what we're going to do to this image. I'm going to use a preset, then I'm going to show you how to use masks. Then in the next image, I'm going to go through each of these sliders and show you how to use those. So what I want to do is I want to get something really over the top so I could really, it's obvious how the masking works. That's why, let's see if we can find some. I think maybe in landscape I could find something a little more. Oh, and as I mentioned, you hover over here and you get the preview over here. You could also click this little box right here and you'll get this grid view of all the different presets applied to the image. And I think I like this color and contrast boost 3. That one seems to be very heavy-handed. So we're going to pick that. You can see, yeah, you can see it really overdid the image. But as I mentioned, I want to do that on purpose because I want to show you how to mask it. Now, if you want to go and get an idea what the original image looked like, you could click right here and you could go to the original image, then click again, you'll see the processed image. You could see them side by clicking there, and there's the original and the processed. Go back to the original there. You could also, if you're in a hurry, just click with the mouse, a left button down on the mouse, hold it in, you could see the original, let go, and there's the processed. You also could hit the space bar, hold it in, there's the original, and let go, and there's the processed. You also, when you're done, if you want to make more room, you could get rid of the panels by hitting this little button there. We'll get rid of that panel. And now we'll come back. I wonder why it's doing that. There we go. Let's see now. There we go. And you could, of course, click here and get rid of this panel, but we're not going to do that right now because I want to use the sliders. But let's get rid of this panel. Give us a little more room. Okay. Now, this right-hand panel is divided up into a couple different sections. We have clarity section here. And really, Topaz Labs Clarity is like the clarity slider in Lightroom on steroids. I think that's the best way to put it. It's got two different sections inside this clarity part. It has dynamics and tone level. And we're going to be talking about that more in detail in the next image. And so right now we're just going to close that down. But, well, actually I could close it down there and there. What we're going to do is masks right here. And what mask does is I look at this image, let's just say, I don't really like any part of it, but let's just say I liked the sky, but I don't like the grass and the bushes and trees. I don't like that. I could mask off that part so the sliders in clarity are not affecting it, or at least affecting it less. So what you'll see here is when I opened up this tab called masks, I have this white palette up here. Those of you that are familiar with Photoshop, this works identically to how Photoshop works when you use masking. A white mask in Photoshop lets everything come through. A black mask will block everything. So to show you that, right now we have this white mask. If I click this little icon right here, you can see it turns black, and then we have the original image back. Now, anything I paint on here, I could bring back, or I could paint in the effect, but we're not going to do that. I want to work with the white mask, so we're going to click that again. Now we have the processed image. Now, as I mentioned, I don't like the way it looks on the grass, so I want to mask that out. But I don't want to mask it completely out. I want the effect there just a little bit. So what we do is we have to paint on the image, and it's in effect painting on this mask. And if I paint in black, I'll be hiding the effect. If I paint on white, I'll be bringing back the effect. But since we have a white mask, there's no sense in painting in white because it's coming through anyway. So we want to paint in black. We're going to get rid of some of this effect down here. Now we have three different brushes. We have a normal brush, we have an edge aware brush, and a color aware brush. Let's use the normal brush first. What we're going to do is, just for this demonstration at this point, I'm going to have strength at 1, which is all the way up. And I'm going to have the brush size somewhere in the middle, right around there. And the hardness, that means like how much it's feathered, basically. I'm going to have that around the middle too. All right, now I mentioned I want to paint away the effect on the grass. So I have a normal brush, and I'm just going to paint, and you could see how it painted the effect 100% now away from the grass. But as you look at the mask, you could see it just went indiscriminately up in the sky also. I may not want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset this by clicking this icon right here, and we're going to use an edge aware brush, and we're going to leave the same settings, but this time as I come through you'll see something slightly different, and it does a really cool job if you ask me. Now as you look at the mask, you could see this tree that is jutting out right there. It did a nice job of going around that, and there's another smaller tree in the background there, and you can see even that small tree is affected right there. So the edge aware brush is actually the brush I use most of the time. So you know, that's a pretty cool thing if you ask me. Now we're going to reset it again. And the last brush is a color aware brush. Now with this brush, what you would do is you would get this little eyedropper right here, and you would sample a color. And we're going to sample like this real yellow part of the grass right there. Now when I paint, it's going to pay attention more so to the yellows, yellow greens. As you can see, the mask looks kind of more I don't know what's the word for that, mottled. So it's not as like when I used the regular brush, it was like painting with a paintbrush full of paint. It just went right across. Now it's basically taking out anything that is really that shade of yellow right there and getting rid of it. So that's something that works pretty well. If you have a blue sky, something like that, you could probably better mask that type of image with color aware brush. Now, I'm not going to do that either. So we're going to reset it. There we go. And we're going to go back to that edge aware brush. Now, as I mentioned though, to start off with, I want the effect on there a little bit. So we're going to turn the strength down. And I would recommend that you do this almost all the time, that you bring the strength down quite considerably, because every time you stroke the grass, or in this case, the grass, and then you let go of your mouse button and then you do it again, you're gonna add on. It's like you dip the paint. You have a little bit of paint on your brush, then you dip it into the bucket, get a little more paint, so you'll add on to it. So the strength is cumulative. So we're going to leave the same brush size, same hardness, and we're going to go in. Now if you look at the mask, you could see it's kind of a much lighter gray. That's indicating that I'm not at 100% strength. Okay, so I haven't left the mouse button down or let go of the left mouse button at all yet. Okay, now I let go. And see, it still, it kind of removes some of the effect from the grass, but not all of it. So we're going to do it again. Now look at the mask up on the top right hand corner there, and you can see how it's getting a little darker. That's because, as I mentioned, the effect is cumulative. There, like that. Now maybe we'll do it. No, actually that looks decent. Maybe we'll do it one more time. Like that. There, then, that's how we could mask out the grass in this instance. Now, I am going to reset it. So that is how we would use a brush. Just kind of to hammer home this point a little more about the masks. I mentioned that this is the white mask, so the effect is showing through right now. If we click right here, we get this black mask. And the black mask is now hiding the entire effect. Now if I paint in white, so I get this reveal brush, so I paint in white now, and I'm going to put the strength all the way up so you can just see it. I'm going to paint the sky now. I'm going to use the same edge aware brush, so I'm adding the effect to the sky. Okay, so we're basically doing about the same thing I did in the last part of the video, except I'm doing it backwards. Instead of starting out with a white mask and painting in black to remove some of the effect, I started out with a black mask and I'm painting in white to bring back the effect. So that now I could maybe pull the strength down and do the grass at a different strength. All right, so I hope that's clear of how these two different paintbrushes work. We have a white brush and a black brush, and we could use either the white mask or a black mask. I'm going to reset it again, and I'm going to go back to the white mask. Now I want to show you down here, below the brush is a gradient. And this is three different types of gradient. We could use a linear gradient, radial gradient, or a reflected gradient. And let's say now I want to, it's a white mask, so the effect is now coming through 100%. I want to remove some of the effect from the grass. So I'm going to bring the gradient from the bottom up. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm just going to draw a straight line all the way up and let go. And oh, I'm painting in white. See, I made a mistake. So we got to paint in black, obviously, because we have a white gradient. That's what I mentioned, is you paint white on white or black on black, it's not going to do anything. So we need to paint black on white. Okay, so again, we're going to start way down at the bottom, go straight up, and you can see the mask, how the gradient very strong down here, which because it's a white mask, that means I'm taking away more of the effect towards the front, and I'm letting more of the effect bleed through as we go up through the image. Now, one thing about this linear gradient, the shorter the line, the less gradual the gradient will be. Meaning, you saw last time I went all the way up. What if I just do like a very short line like that? You could see that the transition zone from absolute black to the no gradient at all is very sharp. So that's one thing you could keep in mind, and you could actually apply the gradient how you see fit. Now, the other types of gradients they have a radial gradient, which is not really applicable to this image. But you would do is you would draw like a radius out from the middle, and you could see you get this circle like that. And the other one is a reflected gradient, and that is kind of like, I like to call it like a double gradient almost. Is you go like this, let's say, and you can see it has the middle part of it is the stronger part, and it fades out going in either direction. So those are the three different types of gradients. Okay, the next thing I want to show you are these two buttons right here. The first one is color range. You open that up, and this is pretty interesting actually. You adjust these two sliders, and you really could just automatically mask out part of the image. So you could go by size, the size of the area that it's looking at, and the sensitivity, how sensitive it is. And what it is I have it at maximum size and minimum sensitivity, it's getting most of the grass here. Now, if you look right here, we have this kind of green button, and this is the center part of the mask where it's looking at the colors. And we could move that wherever we want. And you can see I move it up in the sky, and it's doing the sky. And we can move it down in the white cloud there, and it will do more of the white clouds. And then we can move it right back where we had it, because I liked it right there, and it's doing more of the grass area there. So that's a pretty interesting way to do masking. I think it works really well. So you'd click OK. Then what you could do is you could further refine it by going to the smart feather right here. And what you would do is you could change the feather radius, and you could see how it affects the mask up there. Makes it really, heavier or lighter. The feather aware, again, you just kind of move these around to get it to something that you're happy with. Contrast, strength, something like that. And you could just keep moving it around till you're satisfied with it, and then click OK. And then you have these kind of color range and feathered in such a way that you could really use the mask more effectively, maybe on your image. It depends on the image too. But that's that. The other thing I want to talk to, we have two preset, and all that is the brushes. So we have this edge aware brush here, and let's say we're going to turn it like that so it's kind of an obvious look to it, okay? And that's preset A. Now we're going to go to B, and we're going to just put those right in the middle, all right in the middle, like that. And that just makes your workflow a little more effective. You could go a little quicker if you happen to use a brush that maybe uses a lot of hardness than another brush that is a lot softer. You could preset these and then just go to that one I did first, right back to the other one right there. So that's how you could use those brushes jumping back and forth. Now, down here in the hue, saturation, luminance, which we're going to talk about more in the next image, there's a mask there too, and you could mask out the color. Now, the color changes that you did. So down here, again, I could make an edge aware brush, strength, kind of a big brush size, make it kind of a little harder, and it's going to paint black on a white mask, and like that. And you could see it's masking away a lot of that color that was enhanced by the preset. So in the first mask, we masked a lot of the clarity adjustment that we did. In this mask, we're masking away the color that the preset did. And again, there's the same controls. We have the graduated filter, color range, smart filter, and two different brush settings, presets, if you want to use them. So I think that's it for this image. I'm going to click cancel because I really didn't do anything that I want to keep. More for demonstration purposes. But we're going to go on to the next image. Now there's the raw file, and we're going to go right to the TIFF file. So we're going to right click, edit in Topaz Fusion Express. And we're going to do the original again and go to Clarity and click Run. And again, it's going to create these previews like I mentioned. And we're going to ignore those right now. We're going to go right over and I'm going to show you what some of these sliders do. Now, right now, the way I do it, this may not be the way Topaz does it, but this is what I found works well for me, is I start right at the top and I start with clarity. And what I found is that the micro contrast slider pretty much affects everything. And to demonstrate, I'll just move it way to the right, and you could see that probably every pixel got affected in one way or another. Now, to reset any of these sliders back to their default position, you could just double click on the name and it will reset back to the default position. So again, I'm going to do it again all the way up, and you could see it added clarity everywhere, and you could see the grains of the wood are very noticeable throughout, whether they're darker, thicker grains or they're the finer grains. They're all being shown. Now, conversely, if we go down to the low contrast slider and I move it to the right, you can see it affects most of the pixels, but look at the section right in here where the fine grain is. It didn't really affect that as much. And similarly with the medium contrast, as I move that to the right, it affected even less of the finer to medium grains, even though it's medium contrast, but it's doing the thicker, heavier grain, very, very strong. So we'll undo that. And high contrast, as you might imagine, is going to do even less. It's going to do really the thicker, like down, like this black area right in here. Watch. Like look right in here when I do it. See, it really affects down in there, the darkness behind the horse. So it's doing areas that are really have high contrast, which aren't as prevalent in most images, specifically this one. So what I do as far as this dynamics section is I will adjust micro contrast first, and I will adjust it to my liking. Now with this specific image, I really like the wood to really pop, really show off all the grain. So I'm actually going to push that micro contrast all the way up. In doing so though, I don't like particularly what it did to the horse. So I could mask that away. Remember, we learned masking a second ago. So we're going to just put that all the way up. Now, most of these adjustments then for me are going to be for this wood, actually to try to make the wood look gnarly like it really was. As you know, at times if the light isn't just right, sometimes you lose some of it. So I'm going to really pump these up. Like that. And again, if you could move them to the left, and you'll be actually taking contrast away. And you could do that too. You could make micro contrast maybe way high. And then if you think that the darker parts are it added too much, you could bring the high contrast down, take it away. Take it away from that area. So that looks good. Now the next part is the tone level, and this is kind of like the whites and blacks in Photoshop, but it includes a midtone slider as well. We're going to start with the midtone slider because what that kind of is really a brightness control, because most images, most scenes are mostly midtones. So if I turn this up, you'll see that the entire image pretty brightens up. It seems to, at least. So that's kind of more of a brightness control. The black level, now if I want to see back in here behind the horse, I could turn the black level up. But actually, my vision for this image is that the horse's head is just popping out of darkness. That's what I want. So like that. Now I'm going to mask out the horse, remember? So I'm not really too worried if the horse is getting too dark. So I'm going to mess around with midtones and see how it affects the wood. Kind of like that. And maybe we'll move white up. Nah. I guess right around there. It's really making the wood look very dramatic. I understand I'm really overdoing this. Mainly is because I really want to demonstrate how these sliders really affect the image and how masking could be used to, mask out the parts of the image you don't want the effect to affect. So we're going to go to a white palette with a black paintbrush, and I'm going to have the strength around 40, maybe around 40 or so. And brush size is good. And I'm going to use edge aware again, and I'm going to keep the hardness. I'm going to have a pretty soft brush, I think. So we're going to brush a lot of this away from Mr. Horse. Then we're going to get a little smaller brush to his ears, or her ears. This was a female, as I recall. Now I'm doubling up. See how it's getting darker in some spots because I'm painting over areas. That's pretty cool. All right, so now that it's kind of more closer to my vision of this image is just kind of the horse's head popping out of the back. Okay, that's pretty cool. So that's how I adjust the dynamics and the tone level in the clarity section of these adjustments. Now we have this HSL filter, and it's pretty much the same as the HSL panel in Lightroom. Those of you that are familiar with Lightroom, we have hue, saturation, and luminance. That's what HSL stands for. And we have, I think it's seven, 8. We have the 8 sliders of the different colors, but we have an extra slider here overall, and that is pretty much like a saturation adjustment. So I typically don't mess with that too much. I usually do the individual colors, and like I do in Lightroom, I usually don't mess with hue much because I really don't want to risk making like a blue sky purple or making green grass, orange or anything like that. So I try not to mess with you very much. But one little tip I could give is, like, let's say we're doing yellow. As you move to the left, you're moving it more towards the slider that's right above it. So we're making the yellow more orange, if that makes any sense. So if I want to make the blue purple, we go to the right, stuff like that. So because it's the one below it now. Uh, that gives you a little idea how these sliders work. If I move aqua to the left, I'm making the aqua colors more green. If I move it to the right, I'm making the aqua colors more blue. All right, but I'm not, as I mentioned, I don't really mess around with hue that much. Now, I like his bridle here, and I think we're going to intense the blue on that a little bit. So we're going to turn saturation up on that. We're going to see now what colors affect. You can see oranges, how they affect his face kind of adversely, if you ask me. Let's see, red a little bit. So we'll turn red up just a little bit. I think I'm just going to have the saturation turned up on blue and turned up on red. Then with luminance, I'm going to see when I turn blue down, it should make that darker, that bridle darker, and it does. And if I turn red up, it's kind of brighten his face a little bit. And that's pretty cool right there. So I would say that the hue, saturation, and luminance section is done. Again, I could, do overall, and I don't want to do that. So we're just going to leave that alone because I really don't like that control at all. And with that, I don't think there's anything that I want to mask as far as the color adjustments that I did. Not at all. So I think I'm actually done with the image. Well, wait a minute. You know what? I just saw something. Look at this color I introduced over in here. That I didn't even. I was so concerned, like looking at the horse. I wasn't looking anywhere else, and I just noticed that. So let's mask that away. We have a white mask. So we want to paint in black. I'm gonna go with 50% strength on this one, and I'm going to get a relatively big brush, a relatively hard brush, and not that big. And we're going to paint away the color that I introduced up there and over there. Probably could have used 100% brush on this. Now these are anything that I did. It's not painting away the color, so we're not making it black and white. We're just painting away the adjustment that I did in this HSL panel. Okay. I don't want that on the wood. Now I'm going to reset that, just to reset. And actually what I should have did, I should just have strength up at 100 and just do it. You can just get rid of it, save a lot of time. Like that. And get a smaller brush right here. I have a little bit on his face, like right there. I don't like that. So I'm getting rid of this blue that I introduced to the wood. So now I think I'm officially done with the image. We masked out parts of the HSL adjustments that I did, and we masked out parts of the clarity that I did, specifically on Mr. Horse, or Mrs. Horse, I should say, sorry. And I would say we're done. So I just wanted to show you a couple other things. If you go over here to Loop View, you could see that this little box appears. And wherever you click, that little box will show up, and you could look at it in the loop. Then the mask, we could look at the mask, the last mask we did, and we could also look at the histogram. We could see where we're clipping, and I actually clipped on purpose. Remember, I really wanted it a very dramatic image, so I could actually show you how these tools do it. If I do too subtle of adjustments, I fear that you don't see it in the video. So I really overdo things in these videos. I hope you guys understand that. So you actually could see what the sliders do. So we could look at the histogram too. Usually I have the histogram open, but not always. I usually, between those two, loop and histogram, usually I use a lot on this image. Now, some other things, if you click right there, you could change the background color, and you just clip in it, keep clicking, and it will cycle through like different shades of gray, like that, and you can find a shade that you like, so you would click this light bulb right there. Also, you could go zoom in to 1:1, and then you could zoom back out by clicking here. You could also use the plus and minus little paddles, magnifying glasses here, and zoom in. You could also, I believe, hit Command plus and Command minus, yes, and that will zoom in and out. So if you have a Mac, it's Command plus, Command minus. If you have a PC, it's Control plus, Control minus. We'll go back to this panel over here. Now, if I want to create a preset, I just did all these adjustments and I like it. What I could do is right here, this little plus sign right here, is I will click that, and I'm going to call this dramatic rustic, I guess. All right, let's go with that. Created by me. I'm going to write for a description, nice preset to enhance wood. All right, and I want to put it in a new collection, so I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to call it Tony's Presets, and I'm going to click right there for OK, and we're going to click right there. It's in Tony, going to go in Tony's Presets. So now I created a preset, Dramatic Rustic, and you can see I got the preview there. And if you could see, if I hover over that, I get this tooltip, nice preset to enhance wood. That was the description I put in there, so you could get an idea what that preset will do. If I want to get rid of this preset, I find I'm not using it anymore, I could just click on it and hit the garbage can right there, and I deleted the preset, so it is gone. let's see, these are different, like I could import presets or export presets with those buttons. So as I create them, I could export them so I could maybe give them to a friend or something like that. Also up here in the right hand corner we have we could create new collections, delete collections, or rename a collection. Now I created this collection, Tony Presets. We could delete that, so that is gone. Um, the other thing we could do is we could create snapshots. I should have did this as I was doing it. So uh, I I just was processing this horse, and let's say I did all my clarity adjustments. I could create a snapshot, and it will called snapshot 1. Then I could do some more adjustments, and I could create another snapshot, and that'd be snapshot 2. And it will keep track of my steps. That way, if I'm experimenting and I'm doing something, let's say in the hue saturation luminance panel, and I don't like it, I could just go back to the previous snapshot. Now those preset, or they're not really presets, they're just snapshots. They're stored here though in the preset section of Topaz Clarity. Those will go away. Those won't stay there. They're specific to this image, and when I save this image and close it, these will be gone. So they're not permanent. They're just to help your workflow, uh, to help you get through your workflow and be more efficient. And the last thing I think I want to show you is right here, menu. We'll click on that, and we could come up to preferences, and here I have enable interactive sliders. That means as I move the sliders, it's affecting the image right away. If you have a slower computer, you might want to uncheck that box. That way the effect won't be applied till after you're done moving the slider. Enable tooltips. That's when I hover over those presets and it gives you an idea what the preset does. Or I hover over a tool, it will tell you what the tool does. I have that clicked. Enable auto update will just update the app automatically. Show preset pop-up previews. Those are those here, as you recall, let's say we go into portrait, it's going to do all these portrait presets, and as I hover over them, these are the pop-up previews. Again, a lot of people don't like these, and it might slow you down, so you could go to that preference and turn those off. If you have a slow machine too, you might not like those. You want to close those down. Allow multiple effects open. That means like you could have clarity open at the same time as masks, as hue saturation. See how they're all open at the same time? Typically, I don't like that. I usually have that unchecked. That way, when one of these is let's say that's open and I open another one, the clarity closes. So I only have one open at any time, as you can see. So that's all that does. The other things on here, you could check for updates manually. When you purchase the software, you enter your software key. There's help files. There's a user guide, tech support, product info. Then there's tutorials in here too to help you throughout the program. So that's pretty much everything in Topaz Clarity. When you're done and you like what you did, click OK, and it will actually save the file, create the image, or apply your edits to that TIFF file that we sent over. And depending on, of course, that depends on the speed of your machine. And when it's done, finally, it will close down and it will be in Lightroom. As you can see, it's really ugly. I hate what I did, but again, I hope I demonstrated. Look at this blue, that's ridiculous. But anyways, that's the Topaz Clarity and what you could do. And as I mentioned, it's kind of like the Clarity slider on steroids. That's in my opinion. So that's it for this episode of the Topaz plugins, and I'll be doing another one. I plan to do at least one a week, and a lot of people made me suggestions on what to do. Again, if you have a specific Topaz plugin you want to see me do, leave it in the description below and I'll see if I could do it. I'm going to do them all eventually. I just want to prioritize them by popularity. And Clarity was pretty close, but was one of the more requested plugins that I do. So I did Clarity next. So end of the week next week I'll do another one. Just let me know which ones you guys would like me to do. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys soon.